Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
I was just telling Jason a story about President Ford when he came to see the data center that 5 of us built back in the 80s. Now, maybe sometime I'll tell you that story. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up, 712-770-9418. That's Global Star Network, 712-770-9418. And that is live while we are live. So if you want to listen to USA Prepares, that's a number to call. And, of course, you can always listen to USA Prepares on GCNlive.com, GCNlive.com. And GCN Live has the archives. If you'd like to listen there, that would be a great way to do it. And, of course, YouTube, the Ron Gibson YouTube channel, Ron Gibson, Gibson. And just go to YouTube and type in USA Prepares, or you can type in my name, Vincent Finelli, Finelli, Finelli. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm almost under lockdown here at the farm because of the coronavirus. I am taking it extremely seriously. How are you?
Oh, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Last week I got in probably about a month's supply of food. So, yeah, that's we're not in 100% lockdown yet, but we're ready to do so if we need to. So, yeah,
okay.
We don't tend to go out very much anyway, you know. Yeah.
All right, so let me ask a moral question. My understanding, and I talked with Steve Elkins about this. Steve Elkins is a USA Prepares instructor, a nurse, an ER nurse, and an ICU nurse of 27 plus years experience. He and I are close. And I asked him this question yesterday on the telephone, not on the air. So I'm going to be the first to share this with our broadcast classroom. So other than Steve Elkins' class, you and Guineith and I, we're going to talk about it for the first time on the air. So the Hippocratic Oath, as I understand it, starts out with first do no harm. So if you think about that, and Steve Elkins took this oath, and so did Dr. Shuley, and so did a whole bunch of other medical professionals. And it makes a lot of sense. First, do no harm. Like, don't cut the leg off if you don't have to, right? Don't remove the ear if you don't have to, those kinds of things. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about is, what if you do nothing and that causes harm? What if you do nothing?
Yeah.
And that causes harm?
You've got a point there.
Yeah. So what would be doing nothing? And let me give an example. So throughout the United States of America, there are people who are in positions with the government, the county government, the state government, the federal government, and they are on, let's say, emergency response committees, emergency management committees. And so, they get some medical professionals and say, we want to make sure that we can respond to emergencies. So we need some doctors, and we need some guys who know how to manage heavy equipment, and we need some people who know how to manage crowd control and panic So they have a whole bunch of people on these committees. Now, what if you or what if another person were on one of these committees and you were privy to information? And the information is, well, we've got this virus, and it's called the coronavirus, and it's really bad, and, it's here. But we don't want to tell anybody because we'll cause panic. Just like we don't want to mention that we know what, there are in other species, in the universe, because people would panic and they couldn't handle it. Well, I think that's nonsense, and that people can't handle it. And I also think we ought to know. I also think that if there are people who are contagious in our area, in the United States, wherever we may happen to be, it is incumbent upon people who have taken the Hippocratic Oath to notify those who can be harmed by it. Because the Hippocratic Oath says, first, do no harm. Now, it's not incumbent upon the guy who knows how to drive a bulldozer, and move heavy equipment and those kinds of things, because he hasn't taken the Hippocratic Oath. But those who have, in the medical profession, I think it's incumbent upon them to share that information in a responsible way. Now, I'm not talking about crying fire in a crowded theater. I'm talking about through educational methods to notify family, friends, and the village. What do you think about that, Guineith?
Well, I think that, I'll just hang on, I was just putting some wood on my fire. I think that, if there's somebody there who has the coronavirus for sure, traditionally what they were required to do was required to put up some sort of plague flag, okay, is what it was called, which was a flag of a certain colour, often black, and it basically meant don't go here, okay, and they were required to show that flag on their property, and so on their door or, on their car or whatever it was, then people would know to avoid them. So that was the old standard. That's the traditional standard going back hundreds of years for what people should have done during an epidemic or a pandemic. I don't see that happening these days, Vincent. I don't see too many people out there waving plague flags around, but they did it for everybody's benefit, okay, for their own benefit and also for the benefit of the whole community. That's what used to happen, but, that doesn't happen anymore. Teachers, no. Teachers.
Okay, so the question, Guineith, is what about the morality of this situation? So we know without a doubt that this is a killer virus. We know that. And we, through our research, feel that this is a man-made bioweapon. And that's come out in the last few days. We believe that when it first broke, we said it over a week ago. Right? All right, so under these circumstances, when someone has taken a Hippocratic Oath, a doctor or a nurse, for example, do you think it is a violation of the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm by not saying anything? Meaning they are doing harm by keeping quiet if they know, if they have been briefed, or are they a traitor to this other organization, the government, who says, look, don't say anything. We're going to tell you some secret stuff, and you can't say anything. Which prevails? Is it the Hippocratic Oath that was taken first, or is it the new briefing requirement that we're not going to tell you if you tell anybody? Which prevails?
I would say that they should go with the Hippocratic Oath, and they should notify people in the area that this person has this virus. They should say to this person, listen, you'll have to put up some sort of a, pre-agreed symbol on your door. It varied from place to place. It actually was often a skull and crossbones, meaning death is here, or a black flag on your door. So just so that people know to stay away from you. But that doctor, he has a right and a duty to keep the whole community safe, okay? And he has more of a duty to the ordinary people of the community than what he has to the government. I mean, the government might give him a supposed license to practice medicine, but if you look into it in the Bible, licentiousness, that is, the issuing of licenses, is a sin. It's a very serious sin. If you're a doctor, then you're a doctor, and nobody can or can't tell you that you should, stop being a doctor or that you're a doctor. Do you know what I mean? That's what he'll be frightened of, is that if he says anything, then somebody will come along and tell him that he's not a doctor anymore, which will sort of destroy his life's work and his income.
Right.
That's what they'll do. So then he feels a duty to do what the government says, because he feels bullied into, sort of like, oh, well, I have to do what they say or otherwise they'll stop me from being a doctor. Does that make sense? But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's absolutely wrong. The government shouldn't have anything to do with declaring who is and is not a doctor. I think that there should be a total free market in medicine, meaning that if somebody is a doctor and says that they're a doctor, then you should let the market operate. And if they're a good doctor, then their patients will keep coming back. Each time they get sick, they'll say, oh, Joe down the road, he's a good doctor. He fixed me up the last time. I'm going to go back to him this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
The government should have nothing to do with it.
So that is the dilemma that the medical profession is facing right now. There are plenty of good doctors who I believe are concerned and possibly in fear of losing their license to do what they do because they may violate a government order, which is an immoral order, in my opinion. I think it's immoral to not tell people that they can be in harm's way and die being in harm's way and not have the information to stay out of harm's way. I think it's morally wrong. And what I'm finding in my life is I'm facing dilemmas like this. Now, not exactly that dilemma. And you know where I stand, class, because I have been reporting that I believe that the coronavirus, based on my research, is absolutely, positively real, deadly, and contagious. And we've been talking about what you need to do in terms of protecting yourself. So I'm on the, well, I don't think everybody likes the fact that we're speaking about how deadly this is. But we're going to continue more about this, and we're not giving up. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Because I want to give you a quick thought. This morning we decided to test whether coffee in a number 10 can with one of those vacuum aluminum foil type seals would last 10 years. So we had some Kroger brand. Kroger is a supermarket store in the United States, and we bought a number 10 can about 10 years ago, February of 2010. And we opened it this morning, and you could hear the vacuum seal being opened, the air rushing in, the depression in the coffee grounds, and the coffee is perfect. Now, I don't think that that would be the case if you bought coffee in one of those red or blue plastic jugs, like Maxwell House or Folgers. But this is a steel can with an aluminum seal, and it's vacuum sealed. So if you lift up the plastic lid before you buy one of these, and you see that the seal has a depression, concave, meaning pulled inward, and it's tight, it will probably be fine for years. I can't guarantee it, but I can tell you that our test showed us that coffee will keep 10 years, ground coffee, 10 years, and it's perfect, not rancid. And I can also tell you that I've tested pasta in the box, in a cool, dry, dehumidified room. Think of it like a basement without humidity, cool, dry room for over 5 years. In the original box. Nothing special, just in the original box. But it has to be cool and dry, constant, relatively constant temperature, out of the light. And I can tell you that jars of spaghetti sauce that you would buy, they used to be 89 cents a jar, will last 5 years easily if it's out of the light in a cool, dark, dry location. They're all perfect at those levels. Now, I'm not talking about expensive dehydrated foods, freeze-dried foods. I'm talking about plain old off-the-shelf common items. Coffee in a steel can. And if you'd like, you can buy coffee at Sam's Club, Cain brand, Cain, C-A-I-N. It's all steel. Top, bottom, the cylinder, all steel. You might want to consider that if you're going to buy coffee. This is not a commercial for Sam's Club. It's just that they happen to sell it, and I don't know any other place that does. And it's the least expensive there. So if you want coffee for the long haul, that's one way of doing it. Now, I can't guarantee it, but have I bought it? Yes. Guineith, any suggestions for food that will last a long time should you want to stay home and avoid the GDP running around at the supermarkets coughing and sneezing and doing whatever else the GDP does? Do you have any recommendations for items that people can buy relatively inexpensively before prices go up?
Okay, I would definitely agree with you on the pasta. And I'll tell you why, because when we headed out from Geraldton a number of years ago, that was one of the staples that we packed into our van. We packed into our van about 20 or 30 or 40 bags of pasta. And, when we had to abandon our van and, go hiking, I packed as many bags of pasta into my backpack as would fit. And some of those bags of pasta, we had to eventually drop our packs. The packs were found 18 months later with the pasta still in the packs, okay? And so I got those backpacks back, and I brought them home, and, that pasta, some of it stayed in the cupboard, at the back of the cupboard, and was only used last year, which was 6 years after it had, been bought in Geraldton.
Yep. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. So we've been talking with Guineith Isaacs live in Australia about a couple of things. One of them is moral dilemmas and the Hippocratic Oath. And I absolutely, positively feel that it is incumbent upon the medical profession to share information with the villagers in their area, whatever that may be, whether it be federal, state, county, town, whatever it is. It's incumbent upon them to alert to serious threats that include death. And I absolutely mean that. And I don't think that's what's happening. I think we're being kept in the dark. It took too long to shut down the airplanes. It took too long to get the information out. It still isn't happening at the level it should. Getting the information out. Like, what do you do? So we're doing it. We're doing it. And that that's one of the values of the independent media. And sometimes it's called alternative media. Sometimes it's called alternative radio. The better term that Steve Elkins has suggested that all of us use is independent, meaning we are not biased by the other guys. We're not. So
we don't have an agenda. Our agenda is to help people with our knowledge.
Guineith, as long as you have been, I've never asked you this. I don't think I have publicly, but let me ask you. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Guineith, have you ever received any payment to be on the radio to share your views and your viewpoints? Have you ever received it from USA Prepares or anything or anyone or any organization associated with USA Prepares, or are you a volunteer because you want it to be?
No. I go on air because I know that I have a lot of knowledge that can help people, you know, and because I trained as an environmental scientist, and people, if anyone thinks that an environmental science degree is a cushy degree, then they don't know what they're talking about, because we are required to learn about just about every other area of science, because it all relates to the natural environment. That means that I studied epidemiology, and I studied toxicology, and I studied, all of these different things. I studied ecology, and I studied, mycology, and all these, forest systems, and I studied botany and all these. But at the moment, what we all have to focus on is preparedness. Could I talk a bit more about food, Vincent?
Yes, please do.
I think that would be very, very important right now.
Yes, please do.
There is a food item that anyone can buy, okay? And it's in every supermarket, and it's in the soup section, okay? And that is powdered stock, okay, stock powder. And so you get chicken stock powder, and you get beef stock powder, and you get vegetable stock powder. And what this is, it's a can, or sometimes it comes in little cubes, okay? So there's a number of brands. One of them is OXO. I don't know of the ones that are in the United States, but there's a brand called Bovril, and there's other brands out there as well. There's another brand called Marcel. I don't know which ones of these are in the United States, but the idea is the same. What it is it dried out, ground up stock, meat stock, either chicken stock or beef stock, that has been dried out and preserved with salt and put in a can. I would say that is the number one survival food. If you cannot afford anything else, then you should fill your cupboards up with stock powder and pasta. Because as long as you have got stock powder and pasta, you will not starve. And you can grow vegetables, or you can find wild growing vegetables, that are in your area. Make sure that you do your research and that you're picking something that is edible and that you're not picking a poisonous weed. But yeah, you can do that sort of research, or you can grow vegetables. You can grow things like courgettes, and at the moment, it's because we're at the end of summer here, it's courgette time. So those are otherwise called zucchinis and marrows. And potatoes, carrots, anything like that, onions, all of these grow in the garden. They get harvested from the garden, and they get chopped up, into a pot of soup, into a small saucepan, and that's basically what we live on, is stock powder and pasta soup with cut-up vegetables, a bit of butter. I know that's probably the, that preserved cheese in the plastic wrappers, the cheese slices. It's probably not the best sort of cheese, but we have that sort of cheese because we don't have a fridge. And to have any other sort of cheese, you really have to have a fridge, okay, or otherwise it goes off. But those cheese slices will actually keep for a very, very long time, for maybe a year or two in your cupboard. Do you know what I mean? The ones with the plastic wrappers around them.
Yeah, it's in the United States. It's called cheese food. It's not called cheese. It's called cheese food. And if you go to the store, you'll see it in the in the refrigerated section, and you'll see cheese like American cheese, and you might see it yellow dyed, which is typically what people think American cheese looks like. Cheese is really white, but and then next to that you'll see individual slices individually wrapped, and those are the cheese food, and that's what Guineith is talking about. Also, Guineith, you're talking about powdered beef, if you will, and vegetable and chicken. Well, the brand that's common here in the United States is Herb-Ox, Herb space OX. Another one is Wyler's, Wylers, and it's also known, I believe, as bouillon cubes. Is that correct? What you're talking about?
Yes. Yes, okay. That's right.
Bouillon yes. And, if you were a child of the First Great Depression, I'm talking about the one that started around October of 1929. If you were a child of that, you know about bouillon cubes because they were the savior. That's what happened. People would take bouillon cubes and they'd go out to their backyard where they had a backyard garden, even if they lived in a city, in a small city lot. They would still have a little garden, and they would grow vegetables and cut up leeks and chives and whatever else they could, and throw it in there with some bouillon cubes, maybe even some fresh potatoes or carrots, whatever they had. Peel it, wash it, peel it, and wash it, and then put it in there, cut it up and put it in there. That's what people did to survive, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they had to.
That's how we live. That's how we eat around here. And the peelings of the vegetables get chopped up into small pieces. So the peelings, they get chopped up into about 1/8 of an inch wide slices. And they get put in a bag, and once a day they get taken out to the chicken pen. I call the chickens in, and I do the call something like something like that, which is a mother hen noise. It means, listen, guys, there's food over here. And when I do that, the chickens, they all come running, and they follow me. They follow me back to the pen, and I feed them the peelings of the vegetables. But you've got to chop them up quite small, or otherwise they're not necessarily going to eat them. But that's how we keep our chickens fed, is the peelings of the vegetables, and they're free range. So they eat all the bugs and grubs and seeds that are here, the grass seeds, bugs, grubs, anything that's going, basically. So if they catch a cockroach or a mouse in the garden or caterpillars or whatever, and they keep the pest load down. That's our pest control system.
We have the same.
Yep.
We have the same exact system right here. I'll share something with you, class. So, not last night, but the night before, we keep our chickens right near the back door of the farmhouse. And we have an area that keeps them safe because we've got a lot of predators here. We have coyotes, wolves, we've got a bear running around, possums, armadillo. There are a lot of them. And we
Everything
heard the
eats
chickens
chicken.
making an, yeah, we heard a possum, or we heard the chickens making noise. And the chickens were in fear for their lives because there was a possum trying to break in to the little doghouse that we have for the chickens. We have a little doghouse, and it's up on a table on the back porch. And there it is. The chickens sleep there because it's safe. And a possum was there breaking in. Now, here's the question I have for our class. How long, if you were in that situation, how long would it take for, and Guineith, I'm sure, has been in a situation similar to this, how long would it take for you to recognize that there's a noise, that there's a threat to your animals, and to respond to that threat? Now, the way we responded was simple.
Seconds.
Right. Seconds.
Even in the middle of the night, if we had a fox come through, foxes around here are the main predators, okay? There are pumas in the forest, there are black panthers in the forest, but they're frightened of us. They tend to leave us alone. The foxes are the main issue. If a fox comes through, there's pandemonium here. You know, I know that we've heard on other broadcasts where there's been a kangaroo hopping down the valley or something, and all the dogs in the house, the one down the bottom of the garden who lives there, he's a sheepdog, so he can't really come inside too much, and he can't really be let off too much because he'll go and round up the neighbour's sheep. And I'm sure the neighbour won't appreciate that. But, he lives down at the bottom of the garden, and he is the watchdog. And, I take food down there for him. I give him water. I clean up his poops and all that sort of stuff. But, he lives down there, and if there's a fox comes through, if he gets a whiff of a fox, he starts. And once he starts, the others start, and it's pandemonium. And it takes me seconds, even in the middle of the night, to be alert and to
Hold that thought. Guineith Isaacs and I are talking about staying home and what kinds of food items you should consider. And we're also talking about what happens in the middle of the night, how long will it take you to respond. So a couple nights ago, literally, at 3 o'clock in the morning, literally, it was dark out, the chickens were making noises that sounded like they were in panic. And so we knew that someone was trying to kill our chickens, or something. And it took just a couple seconds for our son and me to jump out of bed, armed. And what we used was in this particular case, a lever-action .22 long rifle cartridge with a 36-grain high-velocity hollow point made by Federal. The kind of ammunition that you can buy, or used to be able to buy, at the Chinese factory outlet, 525 cartridges, at one time $7.99, now more like $23 to $26. They work great. Federal works really well. Other brands, Remington has turned out into be a lousy .22 long rifle cartridge brand. A lot of misfires with that particular brand. So we don't like them. We don't use them. We use Federal, and I use the lever action with our son. And the reason was, rather than the semi-automatic like a Ruger 1022, the reason we used the lever action was controlled shot. It was dark. We had flashlights and wanted to make sure that there were no accidental discharges. Not very good visibility. And that possum was killed because he was attacking our animals, our farm animals. Now, I don't like doing that. And normally we let those possums live, but they get into the barn, they eat the wiring under the hoods, they make their nests under the hoods of equipment, they trash it. They're rats. They're rats with sharp teeth. At least they are to me. So that particular animal was killed. The chickens are fine. So that's what we did. Now, the reason
Vincent,
that we didn't do.
Soup. You should get it.
Well, there were a lot.
Make a nice soup.
You know, it was night, and it took. It was difficult with the lever action open sight rifle that we used. A nice clean headshot would be fine, but the darn thing was moving, and they're kind of small, and it was dark, and we wanted to shoot at the right angle so we didn't break our windows in the house. We didn't want to shoot and have a ricochet take out the wood, dent up the wood stove or vehicles or farm equipment. Yeah. So, it had to be at the right angle. So it was, and by the way, it was a nice little fire drill, not for the possum. But next time we can make some possum soup. But class, you may have to react in the middle of the night, and the question is, how long will it take you? Now, it would have been really fast. It would have been just 1 second to respond with my 45. But that was just, I hate doing that, because when you shoot a 45, your ears are going to ring for three days. Okay, really. And if you want proof of that, just if you have, it'd be very difficult to find some World War II veterans that are still alive. But if you talk to them, they're, if they were in combat, their hearing is diminished greatly because of all the sounds of the shells going off. Yeah. Right. Guineith, I don't know how long bullion cubes last. I've found that they last a year or more. I would think easily a year or more. But if you get them, class, I would suggest you try to find them in glass jars rather than plastic pouches. Would you agree with that, Guineith?
I would. You can always reuse the glass jars easily enough. Yep. Mm-hmm. And, I had a friend of mine on Facebook, and they have a brand of that in the UK which is called Bovril, which is it's kind of a paste, but it's like bouillon, except it's, in a paste form. And he found a Bovril jar underneath a hedge which was over 100 years old. And so that he goes out fossicking and he goes out hiking and all that. And he's a Navy veteran, and that's how he occupies himself. And he makes YouTube videos of his hikes. And he's a personal friend of mine now. We emailed each other on a few topics, but get the glass jars, because then you can reuse them quite easily, and they're not going to contaminate the stock tubes either with anything like BPA or anything like that. You don't want to have anything like that in your system. But most of my favourite powder comes in a cardboard and aluminium tube type can. I don't know if that makes sense. Similar to a coffee can, you get these cardboard coffee cans, and they have an aluminium foil lining in them. It's something similar except smaller, but it costs $3.50 for a can. All
right, we'll be right back. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. If you happen to hear the top of the hour news, you heard that the GDP thinks that Homo Pete is currently in first place to be the Democrat candidate for the president of corporate USA. There's one caucus goer who voted for Homo Pete, and then she realized, well, what? He's a homo? He's married to a guy? And she wanted to change her vote. And it made the internet, and there was a discussion with one of the people who was, running the event, managing the event, shepherding the event, and said, well, people have different views, and it's okay. It's not okay. Homosexuality is not okay. How would you like to have Homo Pete go toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin? Would you like that? How do you think that would go? Which one of those would you think would be the stronger player? in that kind of contest. Or homopede against anybody. You know, in most of the countries in the world, homosexuality is not in good favor. It's considered what it is, a blight, a disgrace. This depravity is now mainstream, and maybe you're probably going to be punished in the court of popular opinion if you don't accept homosexuality. Well, I don't. It's an abomination. I told our children, whom I love dearly, if you figure out or if you find out you're a homo, don't come home. You're not welcome here. That's how strongly I feel about it. And other people say, oh, come on, you love your children. Of course I love my children. But if they determine that they are homos, they're out of here. I don't want anything to do with them. Those guys carry diseases because of their risky behavior. And we've got one of them who is in first place in the race to be the Democrat candidate for the president of corporate USA. Can you imagine that? That's what we're facing. We're facing the GDP, and they are exactly that, the generally dumb public. Guineith, are we being laughed at in Australia because we've got a homo in first place?
Well, it's like this. You know, it's a problem, but the thing with homosexuals, from what I've seen, is as well as their, sexual immorality, they tend to be immoral in other areas of their life as well, okay? So they tend to, not have very high moral standards with regards to things like telling the truth, for instance. They tend to, there are exceptions, but they tend to be very selfish, narcissistic people, okay? And it's come out, and I was going to mention this, but Mayor Pete, one of his advisors had to do with making a voting app for this particular Democrat caucus or whatever it was, this particular meeting. And guess what? They couldn't make a voting app that actually worked properly for people to vote on their cell phone. So, the votes were either rigged or there was something wrong with this app or it just didn't work. And, this is the sort of thing. At the very least, it's incompetent. And at the most, it's just plain flat out corruption and fraud, with this voting app. I don't know if you've heard that story.
Oh,
but
yeah, I have.
With the Iowa caucuses.
I have, and
their piece of advice that put the whole thing together.
There was a gal who was there.
I happen to love that one. Mayor Pete. Mayor Butter's gig.
Yeah, well, what's his butt? Mayor what's his butt? So there was a gal there who was a voting member of the caucus, and then she realized, that's a middle-aged gal, then she realized he's a homo. And she said, wait a minute, he's a homo? She wanted to change her vote.
That.
She wanted to change her vote. Yeah. So we have ignorance at the caucuses. How is it possible that anybody? Well, I mean, he's there with his husband. It's disgusting. They're actually kissing in public. Can you imagine? Oh. That's how low we have fallen so far, and we're not going to stop this free fall because people try to beat us up.
There's been particular people online who are saying, well, this whole Chinese Wuhan virus is the judgment of God, and on us as a nation because, we've done so much stupid stuff. Well, I consider that it's like this. If you walk in God's ways, you have his protection. It's not like God is the great big mean guy up in heaven who's looking to punish us for every infraction, but he gives us a set of rules to follow. Those rules are the best way for you to live your life and have a good life. And if you disobey the rules, there's going to be consequences. Okay? So, the military-industrial complex set up these bioweapons laboratories. And there's in case there's anybody out there in the class who's got any illusions about this, it did not come from bat suits. The coronavirus did not come from bat suits. There are genetic markers in this coronavirus that fairly clearly indicate that this is something that has origins in a bioweapons lab. Some mad scientist who works for the government, probably the U.S. government, and the likely course is that, that the Americans invented it and funded it through a Canadian bioweapons laboratory. There were a couple of Chinese scientists who were sacked for whatever reason from this Canadian lab last year or the year before. They took some samples of their work back home to them to China. The Chinese were planning to breed it up and let it go on us as some sort of, a military attack or revenge or whatever you want to call it. And instead, somebody dropped a jar. The pathogen got out, and, and this is the situation that we're facing at the moment. But this virus has got 88% of its DNA or RNA is of the SARS virus, okay? And the other 12% is HIV. HIV genetic. So what you've got is you've got the SARS virus crossed with the HIV virus. Now, it's not HIV, but it's sort of like the HIV is like the hermit crab shell around the outside of the virus. And that is the delivery system that the virus uses for infecting people. But the mode of the disease, just about everything else about the disease, is like SARS, okay? So what that means is that you've got this disease which, it's highly contagious, like the SARS virus, okay? It's like a really, really bad pneumonia when you get it, okay? And it's got a high kill rate, okay? The kill rate that's being published is something like 2%. But that's taking into account the total number of people infected versus the number of people that die on that day, okay? The people who die on that day began to get sick a week ago, okay? And a week ago there weren't that many people infected because this disease has such a high R value. It's just going out and it's impossible to get away from it. But what I've got to say is how this disease progresses, okay? And I don't have scientific proof for some of what I'm saying. Some of what I'm saying is my hypothesis, but it tends to be backed up by scientific facts. So it needs further investigation. This virus, this disease that is the SARS virus crossed with HIV, okay? So somebody sneezes, somebody breathes, somebody, touches a surface, then that virus particle is going to get onto that surface. It's in the air, you can breathe it in, etc., etc. Once you've breathed it in, what the disease does is it first of all infects the nasal cavities and it infects the lungs. But in an advanced illness, the virus particles have actually been shown to get into the bone marrow. Now, that is a very, very concerning thing, okay? Because once the particles of this disease are in the bone marrow, then what they do is they could, I'm not saying that they will, I'm not saying that they ever have, but there is a potential for this virus to set up camp in the bone marrow and in the lymph. And there's anecdotal evidence that this is happening. Okay, there's a researcher out there on the internet. He's a medical doctor. His name is called Dr. John Campbell. And you can look up his videos on YouTube. I think I sent some of his videos to you earlier, Vincent. They're fairly technical, but if you actually sit down and pay attention to what he's saying, it's not too difficult to understand. Okay? This disease, okay, people, they are shedding the disease particles, the virus particles, pretty well from within a day or two of when they catch it. So they're contagious during the incubation period. And they're also contagious after people are apparently better. They continue to be contagious. They continue to be shedding virus particles in their saliva. Now, that's extremely concerning, okay, because, you know, there's been medical evidence as well. And the medical evidence, it comes from publications like the Lancet and
Guineith?
World Health Organization publications.
Guineith, hold that thought. We're going into a break. Randy will be right with you right after the break. Randy, if you would, please stay with us. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Randy in Texas is joining us. Randy, I want to thank you for waiting over 12 minutes. I've been on other broadcasts, and I know how long the callers wait, and I see them disappear. I mean, they'll call, be on hold for like a minute or two and jump off. And that is not the case with USA Prepares. We have the most polite and brightest in our class as compared to the audiences of other broadcasts, based on my experience. Randy, thank you for calling. You're on with Guineith Isaacs. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Vincent. Good morning, Guineith. Thank you, Vincent. I appreciate, I didn't mind holding, so that's not an issue. Let me ask the two of y'all something to see if y'all starting to hear this discussion, and I've not really had time to really research this, but I am starting to hear reports that this coronavirus is only affecting Asians, that this disease, that this virus is not affecting individuals with European ancestry, African ancestry, Hispanics. Are y'all, and that there's no cases of this affecting whites, blacks, Hispanics. Have y'all heard that?
Guineith, would you like to go first?
I think it's too early in the game to be sure of that just yet. Okay? Because this thing has been, simmering in China since the beginning of December. Okay? And it's now February. So it really started to get serious probably about a week or two ago. So it's taken like that 6 weeks from the likely release date was probably, late November, early December in China. And then you got 1, 2, 4, 8, 10, 20 people, except it wasn't. The likely R number is that people seem to be, thinking now is about R4. So it seems as if, each generation, each new infection is, each person who gets infected is going to infect 4 people. Okay? Now, I really hope that what you're saying is true, because I'm white, my family is white, and I don't want for this to really, seriously impact us. But because this is so novel, it could just affect everyone, you know. But I don't know, and I think that it's too early in the game, because we are here in Australia. The first cases of the coronavirus got here like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so that means that we are still in the incubation phase of this disease outbreak. Okay, we're at the stage where I think there's 13 or 14 people who are, you know, actually recognised officially as having the coronavirus in Australia, although there's probably hundreds at this time who are undiagnosed and who are out and about in the community spreading it. And it's a waiting game at the moment for us to see if it's going to be a race-specific thing, or if it's going to be something that just kills everyone, okay? At the moment, it could be either, and it's too early to tell. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I do understand right now that this is concentrated over in China, and 99.9% of the people there are Asian. I understand that. But like I've been talking with my family about this, and I have small children. And so I'm prepping them that there may come a very quick moment where we are going to have to keep ourselves separate and leave Houston. But just keep in mind, China just closed another 2 cities yesterday, I believe it was.
Yes.
For another 15, 16 million people.
Randy, can you stay with us through the break? I'd like to address some of the things you've been talking about.
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. Randy will be right back with us, and Guineith Isaacs live in Australia. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and Randy in Texas is with us. Let me just give you a recap, class. So, Randy, maybe this will help answer some of your questions. The question about does it infect Asians only, I have done a search. I cannot find that answer. I cannot find it. But here's what we know. Monday morning when I was broadcast, last Monday, not this Monday that just passed, the one before, a little over a week ago, I was on the air with Norm Shuley. We reported that there were about 1,900 people infected, a little over 1,900 on Monday morning. Tuesday morning, that number was 4,500 infected. Wednesday morning, it was 5,000. Wednesday evening, it was 6,000. Last night, 3 o'clock in the morning, 24,000. It went from 1,900 a little over a week ago to 24,000 infected. Currently, there are 492 deaths. It might have gone up in the last few minutes. There are 6,000 people, guests on a cruise ship, quarantined off the coast of Italy right now. The Diamond Princess, Carnival Japan cruise ship, is under quarantine right now. Here's what we know. We know that urine and human waste, solid and liquid, can and does contain the virus. If you go into any big box store, and we'll use Walmart as an example. Now, I'm not saying that Walmart has it. I'm just saying, here's an example. Many of you have been into a restroom at Walmart, and you know for a fact, if you've been in the men's restroom, that there's urine on the floor near and below the urinals, the men's urinals. You know that for a fact. Because if you're paying attention, you back up so you don't step in it. But that doesn't mean the guy before you and the guy before that and the guy before that didn't step in it. If they did, it's all over the floor. Assuming they washed their hands, it's all over the store's floor. Now, do they have a continuous sanitation system that kills bacteria and viruses on the floor? No, I don't think so. Has any of the store employees or customers, have any of them dropped an item on the floor and then put it back on the shelf? Do you think that you might have picked it up and stepped in the same place that thousands of other people have stepped today on that floor? Do you think it's possible that you have it on your shoes? Do you think you might have it in your car, or if you've taken the bus, that you brought it on the bus? How about when you got out of your car and walked into your house? Do you think it's in your house from Walmart's men's room? Okay, or use the ladies' room. When you use those power flushers, those toilets that have high-pressure washers to keep those bowls clean, relatively clean, or at least they might appear to be clean, that water that flushes aerosolizes what was in the toilet bowl at the beginning of the flush. So if you don't turn away when you flush, you've lost your mind. If you stay there after you flush, you've lost your mind. So now we have aerosol spray all over the ladies' room and the men's room, and those who have, we'll call it flatulence, in the restrooms, that also contains the virus, the gas. So it's everywhere. That's why I'm so concerned. Now, let's say...
It's a nightmare scenario.
Absolutely.
It's like something out of
absolutely a nightmare
novel. It really is.
And I'm not making this up. I am not making this up. This is all true. Now, I'm not saying you can get it at Walmart because we don't know if anyone has been in a Walmart. So I'm just using them as an example of a restroom that you might have been in and probably have. So we have people in factories who have been in restrooms. We don't know. Now, here's something else that we do know. Hyundai. Hyundai is an automobile manufacturer. So is Kia. They are South Korean companies. They use parts from China. Hyundai is now at the risk of having supply chain disruptions, and so is Kia, because many of the parts that are used to manufacture Kias and Hyundai vehicles come from China. I ordered before Christmas an item on eBay that's being shipped from China. I haven't gotten it yet. It's never taken this long. I know that other instructors have had the same experience because there are delays in the air freight from China. We know this. I'm telling you, I know it for a fact.
The planes can't leave because of the quarantine. And they might have problems finding pilots who are willing to go in there even if there wasn't a quarantine.
So what comes from China? Okay, I think, Randy, this is kind of everything. Okay, so if you want an electronic something, whether it be a television, a remote control, a DVD player, a Blu-ray player, you want an Apple phone, everything electronic comes from China or has Chinese ingredients. Automobiles. If you want to buy a front axle for an all-wheel drive car, whether it be a German car or an Asian car or an American car, if you buy an aftermarket replacement axle because the constant velocity boot, the rubber boot, has worn out and there's play in it and it's gotten dirt in it and it's been worn beyond its useful life, if you want to go to AutoZone or some other auto parts store, it probably is going to come from China. If you buy STP brand oil filters that are branded, that's the AutoZone house brand, you'll probably see made in China. If you buy Fram oil filters, some of them are made in China. There are so many products that are made in China. This can cripple the entire country, whatever country you're in, because so many parts come from China.
Remember this.
Go ahead, Randy.
Water pumps and solar panels and charge controllers.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
Just before Christmas.
Absolutely.
Just before Christmas, I got a really strong impression from the Holy Spirit that I should order 3 charge controllers from China off of eBay. And so Christmas was coming, and I thought, oh, crap, I'm going to have money for Christmas and all that as well. So the Holy Spirit said, no, get some charge controllers. Get 3 of them at least, And so I went on to eBay, and I forked out, and I got 3 charge controllers, and they arrived, they arrived within a week or so, a week or two. But if I hadn't ordered those charge controllers then I may not have ever received them. And the thing about a charge controller is it is an absolutely key component of the solar power system that we have. And without our solar power system, there's no water pumping, So this is it. That sort of thing is going to become unobtainable. And it's a small
Randy?
part, but it's an absolutely key component. And they do have a tendency after a few years. I mean, they can get things like lightning strikes. That's a weak link, in the system. Is if there happens to be a short or, whatever, then, it tends to be the charge control that cops it. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Absolutely, because the antenna for the charge controller happens to be the solar array that's out in the open. It has to be out in the open. So the first thing that gets hit by static electricity, by lightning, is the solar array, which is connected by wire to the charge controller, which is connected to the inverter, which is connected to the battery bank. Randy, you had some comments?
Yeah.
The reports I'm hearing is that this virus is staying active on surfaces for up to 5 days. And that also leads back to what you're talking about, Vincent, about stuff coming from China. And I've had this running joke with my kids for years about why I really don't like buying stuff from China, because I tell them because Chinaman may have scratched his butt with it. And that may be I may be joking in one sense about that, but on another side, it's really not a joke. It could be contaminated, and you've got to be aware of that.
Okay, let me address that. Let me address that. So a couple days ago, we're sitting in the kitchen, and our son came in from the farm, and he said, "Hey, Dad, you know that great big box that we have?" And now this happens to be, I bought it a couple of years ago. It's an electrical service panel junction box. It's huge. It's probably 3 feet tall, maybe 3.5 feet tall. It's maybe 2 feet deep and probably 2.5 feet wide. So it's a big metal box, and it's a Faraday cage. And I bought it at a junk store, brand new. And he said, "You know that box we got, right, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Here's what we should do. What do you think about this, Dad? Why don't we get some ultraviolet light and place it in that box? Anything that comes into the farm that we buy goes in the box." What a great idea.
That's a really good idea.
Ultraviolet light in the box.
And those are very cheap to buy. They're not expensive.
That's correct. It has to be ultraviolet C.
They're often made in China as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, so so I'm going to tell you what I did, class. So I spent the last week finding the last of the items that I think we should have for protection and for the lockdown. And I bought them. I bought them on eBay. And I tried to find U.S. sellers, if possible. Now, there's a premium. You can buy it in China, from China, and have it shipped, and you may get it. We don't know. It may take a while. Or you can buy it from a U.S. seller who's already bought it and is going to charge you between a 15 and a 25% premium because it's already in the country. So if you need it, keep those thoughts in mind. So we bought the things that we needed, and it's getting difficult to get some of these Chinese items. And the U.S. suppliers know this, and they're raising their prices. Randy, you're spot on. You're right on the money. Your thinking is right. It's in concert with Guineith's, and it's in concert with mine. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share with us?
No, that's it. I'm up here in the country anyway, so I got to get out to the land. It's good talking to you, man.
Randy, thank you so much for your insight and your concern and sharing with us. How's Randy in Texas? Thank you again. Guineith and I will be right back. I believe it's very, very serious. And the government of China is enforcing the corona quarantine by drones. And they're using these drones with front-mounted speakers to fly around and tell anybody who's not wearing a face mask to do so. They're also requiring that if you're infected, that you report to the government that you're infected, and then they will monitor you with a transmitter attached to your body, typically like a wristwatch. But this is a transmitter, and if you disconnect that from, it talks to your cell phone through Bluetooth. And if you separate by more than, let's say, 60 feet or so, it will alert the government, the police, that you have wandered off. And if they catch you, you are subject to being imprisoned and fined. Yes, it's true. That's what that's what China is doing right now. In the United States, there's a school district, and this was about 5 or 6 days ago, Three Rivers School District in Ohio. And the entire school district was shut down for 2 days last week after nearly 600 students called in sick. About 50 employees, staff, called in sick. Now, how many people are in this school district? 2,400. 1/4 of them called in sick. And they seem to have the same symptoms: high fever, vomiting, body aches. I've talked to a number of people throughout the last few days, and many of the people that I've talked to are saying that they feel lethargic. They don't want to do anything. And they just don't have the get up and go. The get up and go got up and left. They just don't feel right. The stomach isn't quite right. They have headaches. This is what, now, not debilitating. And then I've talked to some others who have had debilitating vomiting, where they can't do anything because they have dry heaves and they are vomiting. That's what I'm hearing. Now, maybe it's just me, and I don't want to sound like someone who's all doom and gloom, but I've got to tell you, I believe that this Chinese situation, the coronavirus, is absolutely, positively real. And what I said about the men's room and the urine and the airborne flatulence carrying the virus, it's all believed to be true. So, at the same time, what we're seeing is that people in the generally dumb public is out there blissfully ignorant, and they have no clue. They're out there. They're not bringing in supplies. They don't think it's they don't think it's worthy. Some have heard about it, a little bit about it, but they're not reacting. And I guess that's okay, because if they're not smart enough to react, what are they here for? Are they just in the way? I hate to sound like that, but I've seen so many people who I'm talking about diabetics even, who won't stop eating sugar and bread. It's their life. It's not mine. It's their life. And yet they'd rather stick that needle in them than try to cure their own type 2 diabetes. I'm exasperated talking about it. So if they don't want to fix it, I'll just tell them once. I'm not going to tell them over and over and over again, because they don't get it. And does it impact me? Probably not. But the supply chain's going to impact me. and you and everybody else. If you need that water pump for your well and you can't get it from China, you got a big problem.
Mm-hmm. You're going to have to figure out some other way, you know, and there might not be another way.
I do know.
You know, if your water table is 300 feet down, you know, good luck with bringing that water up with a cup.
Gwyneth, I've heard some.
But I'm laughing sarcastically. You know,
I've been to preparedness conventions, and I've seen people at these conventions. I'm not talking about ours. I'm talking about others, and they will have these hand pumps, and they'll say you can pump water. That's what you need to have. Let me tell you what. And I've seen people say, oh, you can ride a bicycle and hook it up to a generator, and you can generate electricity for your house. I got to tell you, that's a pipe dream. Because if you have a well that's 508 feet, the column of water in the well pipe, just standing in the well pipe, ready to be pushed up, weighs 800 pounds. 800 pounds.
Wow.
You think that's going to take a lot of work to push that water up that pipe? You bet. If you think you can sit on a bicycle and crank away, pedal away, and generate electricity, really? 1 horsepower is 746 watts. If you're a tenth of a horsepower, that would be a lot. That's 75 watts. It's not going to work so well. Gwyneth, any quick comments in 5 seconds?
Yeah, the thing is, I've got some information on another